Hi folks, welcome back to Recap Pro. Today we will be exploring a Southeast Asian cinema called A Frozen Flower. The film begins with an assembly of kids who are sitting and being taught by a teacher. The teacher in a clear authoritative voice questions the kids, who is the best subject for the king? The kids reply with various different answers. The film cuts to Kung Rongwei base camp where the kids are being trained under the king's supervision. The kids battle it out to become the best in their class. The king starts training the kid who is determinate and is practicing at night. The kid is playing a musical instrument with the king. Upon being called by the princess from Yvonne, the king disposes of the guard and says that he has not finished playing the instrument. A bunch of guards in purple uniforms is chasing Han Beck on horses. Han Beck is stopped by Hong Rim and is not able to escape with the girl. Hong Rim is feeding the king and asks him to reconsider a huge favor about forgiving Han Beck. The king denies the request, but after some persuasion from Hong Rim, the king agrees. Hong Rim informs the soldiers about the king's decision on sparing Han Beck's life. Hong Rim warns everyone that this is the last time something like this can happen. The guards thank Hong Rim and are welcoming Han Beck back. No Tak cuts everyone and tells Hong Rim to stop pillow talk for favors. Hong Rim kicks No Tak and threatens him to never speak ill of the majesty again. Hong Rim is combing King's hair as the king is appreciating the honeysuckle tea that Hong Rim made. The king asks whether Hong Rim would do the same thing as Han Beck and leave the palace. Hong Rim replies and says that he will never leave his majesty. The queen enters the room with some soup for king. She says that an envoy from Yvonne is coming, and she asks the king to take efforts for an heir. The queen calls Hong Rim and thanks him for saving her maid who ran away with Han Beck. She further tells him to be cautious as his services to the king can be misinterpreted. The king and the queen are having lunch outside of the palace. The king admires the queen for wearing the same sachet she wore in Yvonne. He asks her to sing a song and confirms with Hong Rim about the same. The queen starts singing the song with her choir. There is an attack on the king. The king's army retaliates and a battle breaks out. Hong Rim and the king are pushed into a corner but survive to manage the attack. They both get injured in the process. The higher authorities blame the chief, Hong Rim, for the failure of the king's protection. Hong Rim asks the king to punish him as he is not able to serve him properly. The king tells Hong Rim that without his help, he wouldn't have survived the attack. Hong Rim comes to examine the body and discovers that Lord Cho has been behind the operation. He asks his men to continue the search and collect evidence. In a large assembly, the father of the Yvonne nation raises a query about the issue of the heir. Back at the king's palace in Goryeo, the king's advisors suggest that this issue cannot be prolonged and some action is necessitated. The queen gets angry and suggests that the ministers are crossing a line by giving suggestions on the issue. The queen decides to sleep in the king's room. The king tells the queen to return to Yvonne as he is not capable to possess a woman. The queen asserts that she is staying. The king and Hong Rim perform intercourse, and it is revealed that the king is homosexual. The king suggests that a consummation process between Hong Rim and the queen should take place. Hong Rim denies being a part of such a process. The queen and king are getting ready for the process of conceiving an heir. The king arrives in the room and consoles the queen for what is about to come. The king orders Hong Rim to go in and finish the conceiving process. Hong Rim after much hesitation tries to kiss the queen but gives up as he is unable to commit such an act. The king questions Hong Rim and tells him that there are only 2 chances left. Hong Rim asks the king, why did he choose him? Hong Rim and the queen begin the process of conceiving and after some hesitation go through with the process. Afterward, Hong Rim decides to visit Byuklin-do and asks for king's permission. They discover some news about the recent attacks. Hong Rim is restless and cannot forget the queen's memories. Sung Ki gives the king some news while Hong Rim is still exploring the town. Hong Rim sneaks and takes a peek at the queen. The king is worried and waiting for Hong Rim's return. The king and Hong Rim decide to sleep at the base camp and return to the palace in the morning. Hong Rim buys a sachet for the queen. The king is visiting the queen as she has fallen really ill. The king suggests that she might be pregnant but the queen replies negatively and says she has been menstruating. The king advises his physician to deliver the honeysuckle tea to the queen. Hong Rim is told by the king that giving tea to the queen might not be a good thing. The king decides to postpone the consummation date. Hong Rim decides to check up on the queen's health and gives her the sachet he bought for her. The celebratory assembly takes place, and the king appreciates Lord Taeon. The ministers discuss the current situation of the king's heir. They decide that it is time for Lord Kyungwon to be enthroned. Hong Rim is called to the library by the queen. The queen and Hong Rim perform intercourse, but the assembly is still in session. The king is asked to perform for the crowd. The queen tells Hong Rim that she will be waiting tomorrow at the same place. The king is still singing for the crowd. The king and Hong Rim are eating fish. The king tells Hong Rim that he should await for a nice gift. They both are interrupted by Sung Ki. He informs them about the minister's involvement in the recent attacks. The queen waits for Hong Rim's arrival. Hong Rim returns to the library but finds that the queen has left. Hong Rim is quite late to inform the king about the tailing. The king asks his men to get Hong Rim as his gift has arrived. Hong Rim barges into the queen's room as he is not able to control his urge. The king awaits for Hong Rim's arrival but he is busy at the queen's chambers. The queen offers Hong Rim some rice cakes that she made for him. She tells him it is a custom in Yuvon to make these for their love. Sung Ki tries to pursue King and replace Hong Rim as his favorite. Hong Rim arrives back at his room. The king is waiting for Hong Rim and questions him. Hong Rim tells the king that he has been reading about tactics in war. The king asks him to display the new tactics in the battleground. Hong Rim and the king fight with their swords. Hong Rim loses to the king, and the king tells Hong Rim to provide his loyalty from the heart. Hong Rim is sitting and drinking tea in remorse. The man comes and tells him that Lord Tae-on is also involved in the treason and the recent attacks. They capture the traitor and make him confess everything. It is revealed that the queen's brother, Lord Tae-on, is also a part of the whole plan. The king tells Hong Rim the plan to have everyone executed. He tells him to assassinate Tae-on in his house. At the assembly, all the ministers are celebrating and enjoying lunch. The soldiers enter the assembly and the king tells the ministers about the recent events. The king orders the soldiers to behead the ministers. The minister's cry for help is not being heard by the king. Hong Rim is sent to execute Tae-on. The king informs the queen about her brother's involvement. Hong Rim meets with the queen at the library. After being questioned by the queen, Hong Rim tells her that her brother is safe. Sung Ki informs the king about Hong Rim's actions. The king calls the queen and Hong Rim to tell them about the change in the consummation process. He tells that since Hong Rim has failed, Sung Ki will take part in this process. The queen comes to Hong Rim's room and pursues him to run away from the palace with her. Hong Rim rejects the offer and says that he will now only serve the king. Hong Rim visits the king and confesses his crime, and asks the king to punish him for his deeds. The queen slits her wrist in a bathtub. After being questioned by the king, Hong Rim tells the king that it was all impulsive lust. Hong Rim is advised to go and provide his services at the border. Hong Rim is unable to play the instruments properly. The king is making a painting about his dreams of the two visiting Liao Dong. The king asks Hong Rim to stay for a while and go to the border after 2 weeks. Hong Rim is firm about his decision and suggests that he will leave tomorrow. Hong Rim is being called by the queen to the library. He rejects multiple times but is informed that the queen has conceived. Hong Rim leaves the king's chambers to visit the queen. The queen and Hong Rim discuss the kid and Hong Rim's departure. The king wakes up and is perplexed. The queen tells Hong Rim that she hasn't informed the king about her pregnancy. The king is trying to find Hong Rim. The queen and Hong Rim grow close to each other and start performing intercourse. The king realizes and proceeds toward the library. He catches Hong Rim and the queen during the act. The king is aggravated and ties Hong Rim. He asks Hong Rim how can he humiliate him like this. Hong Rim confesses that it was his love that needs to be punished. The king questions him whether it was love or not. Hong Rim replies that he loves the queen. The king angrily advises his men to castrate Hong Rim. The men castrate Hong Rim with his sword. Hong Rim is kept in a cell. The minister informs the king that the queen has conceived. The king asks Sung Ki to eliminate everyone who has been involved in the consummation process. The king visits Hong Rim and asks him one last time to come back with him. He tells Hong Rim that everything will be fine and back to normal. Sung Ki executes the people that were involved. The queen sends Han Baek to help Hong Rim escape the cell and flee away. Hong Rim realizes that the queen is not present at the discreet location. The king asks the queen about Hong Rim's whereabouts. The queen denies knowing any information about Hong Rim's location. Hong Rim decides to go back to the queen. He comes back midway and realizes that the king has captured everyone else. The king tortures the soldiers to seek some information. He hangs everyone's faces on the castle. At the soldiers' banquet, Hong Rim disguises himself and sneaks into the palace. The king is waiting for Hong Rim in his chambers. Hong Rim gets ready for the battle. The queen tells Sung Ki to help Hong Rim as that will spare his life. Hong Rim enters the palace. He is stopped by his men. He kills all of them and enters the palace. He reaches the king's chambers, and the king tells him to sit and relax. Hong Rim tells the king that he is there to take his life. They both start fighting with their swords. Hong Rim says that he has nothing to lose. The king questions Hong Rim's desire for love. They both injure each other as blows are exchanged. The king tells Sung Ki and his men to hold back. The king penetrates his sword into Hong Rim's chest. The king asks whether Hong Rim loved the king, even for once. Hong Rim replies negatively and penetrates his sword into the king. Sung Ki kills Hong Rim. The queen enters the site but is escorted. Hong Rim looks at the king before taking his last breath. The movie cuts to the past where Hong Rim and the king are riding horses as displayed in the painting. Thank you for watching, folks. See you at the next breakdown.